Hey viewers, my name's Kara. I'm your host for Tuesdays here on the Pagan Perspective. This week we are doing another one of our throwback topics from earlier years of the collab. So we're revisiting a topic that we have covered before in the past. And this week it is craft names or magic names. And this is the idea of people who practice magic or witches, pagans, however you identify or however you consider people in the craft community or in the magic community, whatever that means, taking on basically kind of a nickname, but not a nickname that's like based on your everyday name that you use. Maybe it was your given name, maybe it's your legal given name, whatever. But another name that you go by, and this is usually a name that people only go by within the context of magic, the craft, the witchy pagan community. So this would be like, my name's Kara. This would be like if I had a nickname that I used online talking about pagan stuff, or if I were to write my blog posts under a different name, or when I go to pagan pride events and stuff like that, the name that I would call myself by. So a lot of our favorite authors have done this, a lot of authors in general, whether or not they're your favorite. So one that pops into my head immediately, of course, is Silver Ravenwolf. Silver Ravenwolf is her craft name or her magic name. It's not the name that was given to her by her parents at birth. That would be on the birth certificate, on the legal documentation. Some people do legally change their names to their craft name because it is their chosen name and they want that to be their legal name for all intents and purposes throughout their whole lives, and that's cool. That's a separate process. Not everybody does that. A lot of people will go by their, I will call it a mundane name for the rest of this, even though we know that the mundane and the magical really overlap and cross in a lot of people's lives, so they're not mutually exclusive. But a lot of people go by their mundane name in their everyday life, or their everyday name that you like to be called. It's a name that you like, it's something that you do identify with, but on a personal everyday basis. It's what your family calls you, it's what your friends at school call you, it's what your colleagues and your coworkers call you, whatever, stuff like that. And that might be a nickname, it might be a more familiar term, such as someone named Robert going by Bobby, or anything like that. Rebecca becoming Becca, Becky, whatever the case may be. Might have, or might be, he, have and be, might be a nickname. But then your craft name would be something different. This would be going by something like Silver or Raven or anything, really. So, what do I think about craft names? What do I think was the original purpose of them? What do I think is the purpose of them now? Has it changed over time, the reason that we use these names? Do I have any that I use in public practice? And what else? The text of the topic and all the questions about it will be in the description of this video, as always. It's all of those, and and just the idea of, do we think that we have to have them? Because I remember that when I was first studying paganism like a decade ago and I was first learning about it, it's kind of the impression of a lot of people as you first start to learn about it that you pick up from other people is that you have to have a craft name, that you're not a real witch or you're not a real student of paganism or magic or whatever until you have a magic name or you have a craft name. And I will say Alvine Green recently did a really great video about how they chose their craft name, Alvine Green. And I knew that this topic was coming up on Pagan Perspective, so when I saw that Alvine posted that, I was really excited to watch it and get their perspective, and so now I know that it exists. So it's a fairly recent, within the past month or so, video about how Alvine found or chose their magic name, Owlvine Green. So people have done individual videos about their own craft names, their own magic names, what it means to them, why they chose it. Now for me, as I've mentioned, my name is Cara. I go by Cara Mia, or Cara Mia if you are Italian, online, because that is the version of my name that I choose to share with the public and that I like to go by publicly. When I first started posting videos about magic and paganism and all this kind of stuff, a lot of people assumed that Cara was a magic name or a craft name that I had chosen specifically. And that's not the case. It is actually the name that my mother gave me, but it is a magic name. I mean, names hold power in general. Every name that we give to something holds power. So my name is a magic name for sure. It holds a lot of power. It holds a lot of meaning for me. It happens to be something that I like and that I resonate with. So I do use it. I love the concept of craft names and magic names, by the way. The reason that I have never really gone by one publicly is that I feel, and I have many that I've used in private practice or in different groups, smaller groups and things like that on an individual basis. But the reason that I don't have like one that I've chosen, like Silver Ravenwolf or Owlvine Green or Phoenix LaFay or any of these things, right, is that I feel a bit like, I'm looking to see if it's near me. I have 2 copies of this book. I feel a bit like Stargirl, one of the main characters, the titular character from Jerry Spinelli's novel. I think it would be considered juvenile fiction. I first read it in like 5th grade. It's called Stargirl, and one of the main characters is a girl called Stargirl who comes to this new school for the first time, and she tells everybody her name is Stargirl, and they're like, that's fucking weird, that's not a name, what the hell? And this isn't spoilers, don't worry. She explains to people that her parents did give her a name at birth. That's her mundane name, her legal name, we'll say. But they've always let her choose her own name. And so throughout the course of her life, when she was a little girl, and then as she grew up to like a high schooler, I think at the time of the book, junior high, high school, something like that, United States terminology. So throughout grade school, essentially, she changed her name whenever she felt like she outgrew the previous one. So, for example, I think one of her earlier names in the book, we find out she once called herself Mouse, and at another point she called herself Mud Pie, and now, at the time that we meet her in the novel, she goes by Stargirl. And that's her name. And I fell in love with that book immediately when I read it back in, like I said, 4th, 5th, 6th grade, sometime in there, before I was even in junior high, before I ever started studying paganism and all that. I loved this concept. I loved the idea that you can choose your name and that it changes with you as you grow. And so I have had many names throughout my life, kind of nicknames that I've had for myself or that friends have used with me back in school, or now that I use privately in my practice. But I've never chosen one to go by because I feel like it's not something that we would be able to alter every few years as we see fit. People rebrand themselves, people change their usernames online, and they change all their social media, but that's a little process, right? Like, you have to change your name everywhere, and people know you by a certain thing, and it just can be difficult to completely change your name all at once. And so I always worried that if I picked a name, a few years later, my path might change, my life might change, I might not feel like that name fits me anymore, and I would want to change that name, but then I would have to be like, oh, I don't go by Mouse anymore, now I'm Stargirl, you know, like that kind of thing. So that's really, honestly, the main reason why I don't have a public craft name, is because I have not yet found one, or one has not found me, that feels right, that I feel like will feel right forever, like into the foreseeable future, you know? But I think that the main idea then, this is like what you'll read about them if you look up craft names, magical names, what are they for? The main idea that we think of is back in the day when witchcraft was still illegal in a lot of places, including here and in England. There were laws against what people considered witchcraft. And so a lot of people would use a craft name to maintain privacy and to separate their magical life and their witchy connections with other witches and their witchy doings, things that they would do in the community as witches, their spell work, all this kind of thing, to keep that separate from their day-to-day lives and families and jobs. And so it was a way that other people knew you by this special name and they didn't necessarily know who you were in real life. People do this now on Facebook by using nicknames or alternate names on Facebook so that your boss can't find you. Or I know like a lot of my friends are teachers, so they have different names on Facebook so that their students can't find them, even though, you know, you can do all your privacy settings and stuff like that so that people can't see your posts. Sometimes people just don't want certain people in their lives, students, bosses, estranged family members, whoever. Sometimes you just don't even want them to find your profile at all, regardless of how your privacy settings are. So people do this on Facebook. It's a concept that we know about. And that is something that pagan authors have done too. So they'll have, I say authors because Thorn Mooney has talked about this in her vlogs on her channel as well. Like, authors tend to be like pagan celebrities. Like, the people that everyone knows are the people who have published books. So this is what I'm thinking is like, I know that when Facebook was really cracking down some years ago on getting rid of profiles that had alternate names, some of the people who were affected by that were pagan authors who were published under their craft name and had Facebook accounts under that name so that they could friend people within the community under the name, their pen name, essentially, the name that they are known by in the craft community, in the magic community, whatever you want to call it. And so that was a thing, because it's like, well, yeah, it might not be their legal name. They might still have a separate legal name, but it's their name. You know, it's not like sometimes people will just put like really crazy weird things as their name because they want to do something weird with it. But a lot of people have different names that they choose to go by. And, you know, like Silver Ravenwolf is Silver. Like, you know, I'd be like, nice to meet you, Ms. Ravenwolf, you know, stuff like that. I met Thorn Mooney recently and, you know, I call her Thorn. That's her name to me. That's who that person is. I mentioned Phoenix LaFay earlier as one of the reclaiming teachers that I've worked with a couple of times. I know that person as Phoenix. That is their name. These are all people whose blogs I've been reading and following online for years, and then I meet them in real life. It's like, there's no question about it. That is their name. And so people know me as Katamia. I do feel like today and now, some of those reasons still apply. Some people obviously still do it for privacy and for keeping their magical lives and magical happenings separate from their everyday lives and family and friends and jobs. I don't think that it's as much needed for safety now as it was, because again, witchcraft used to be, or things that people considered witchcraft, because obviously that word means lots of things, used to be illegal in different places. There were actual laws against it, and so you really wanted to keep it under the radar, whereas now there are laws that protect us, and we just have to deal with like people, individual people not getting it. But we have legal protections now, so it's not as necessary for pure safety, but it might still be something that you want to keep secret because maybe there's a matter of personal safety. Maybe there's someone in your family who really would react poorly if they found out what you were talking about on the internet, you know, stuff like that. So yeah. I think that another big reason that people do it, and this is probably something that also used to be the case, even though we mostly think of it as, oh, people were doing it to keep their witchy lives secret from their everyday lives. I think another big reason that probably did exist and still does is that, like I said earlier on in this video, names hold power. And so depending on what you are working on in your path, or depending on a tradition that you're getting initiated into, or a new degree level that you're initiating into, you know, progressing further, whatever the case may be, you might want to take on a name, or you may be given a name, depending on how it works, that taps into the power that you either most represent and most resonate with, or the thing that you most need to come into your life at that moment. And I've known people to do magic names kind of both ways. Some people choose magic names because it's something they really like and that they feel they really embody in themselves inherently. And some people will choose a name that is something that they feel they don't currently embody, that they are progressing toward, that they want to bring to them by calling themselves that name. I've seen it happen both ways, and I think both are extremely valid, and it's going to depend on the person, what you want to do, and why you're choosing your name, or if it's choosing you, and if it has to do with a quality that you like or that you're looking towards, if it has to do with a deity that you're devoted to, that you are taking their name as your own magic name or part of your magic name, stuff like that. If it's an herb that you really like to work with, if it's an animal that you have a very strong affinity with. For example, like I have a very strong affinity with ravens and crows. But a lot of people go by Raven or have Raven as part of their craft last name or their surname, stuff like that. So it's kind of like we still completely respect and love people who have Raven as part of their names. But if you're anything like me, you think, oh my God, like everyone is Raven something. Like I don't want to have the same name as everyone else. And it's not meant as any offense to the people who do choose that. It's just how my brain works. That like, you know, my name's Kara. There's not a lot of people named Kara. I'm used to having only a few people that I meet throughout my life have the same name, let alone the same spelling. It's not like, I'm trying to think of like, what was the most common name when I was in school? Probably Michelle. Like if your name is Michelle or Sarah or Katie, there's a lot of you. And so it might not feel weird because you're like, well, yeah, like it's totally fine that people have the same name. People do have the same name. There are lots of people with the same name. But for me, like I didn't grow up knowing any other Karas. Now I know a few Karas, and I've met like one other Kara who spells it the same way. And Supergirl's name is Kara, but it's not always spelled this. I think Supergirl's name is spelled with a K. I don't remember. But anyway, so to me, it's just an extra consideration, if you will. But yeah. So that's what I think of magic and craft names. That's what I think they were for and what I think they're for now. Oh, so personally, I would love to one day have a craft name that I just use forever. I don't know if I'll ever feel like it's going to fit forever. I think I'm always going to be a Stargirl at heart where I just want to be able to change that name after a while. And so Kara will always be with me. That name, Karamia, will always be part of me. And so I use that because it's the string that ties it all together, if you will. Like that'll always be there, no matter what other names I may grow into and out of. I think when I choose one, it will be because of some big thing that has really strongly affected me and is something that I am very tied to or that I want to become very tied to that I decide to take it as my name. Kind of like when people get married and they choose to take their spouse's last name or combine last names or something and create a whole new name to represent that bond and that they're becoming part of something else beyond themselves. That's kind of what I think of as magic names and craft names. But, I mean, it could also just be a nickname. It's whatever. Like, it doesn't have to be that serious. It's what I keep telling myself, but, you know, it's just how my brain works. So let us know in the comments if you have a magic name or craft name, or if you don't, that's cool too. Obviously, it is not required that you have one, but it is something that some people like to do, either, again, for safety, privacy, as a mental cue that, like, okay, in my everyday life, my name is Heather, and this is Heather, and she's an accountant, and she does this, and this is her life. And then when she steps into circle, she is, you know, whatever, Ocarina of the Moon. Drawing inspiration from your surroundings, you know, and then that name calls to mind something completely different. You're in a new space and in a new time, and you've left Heather the attorney with far too many errands to run behind for a moment, and you are just being Ocarina. That's a pretty name, actually, if you think about it. Go ahead and use it. You can have it. I will see you guys next time. Until then, don't forget to be awesome, blessed be, and goodbye.